Hello everyone. In this video, I'll be covering the rules for global variables. We have 4 rules for global variables in Python. Let's get started by going through the example for rule number 5. I'm going to initialize a variable called MSG with a string value of hello. Then I'm going to define a greeting function. Within the greeting function, I'm going to call the print function to display MSG. Let me call the greeting function. Observe that the output of the program is showing as hello. I'm going to add in 2 more print function calls. I'm going to call the print function to display MSG before I call the greeting function. Let me repeat the print function call after I call the greeting function. Observe that all 3 function calls provide the same output. Let's differentiate between the print function calls output and the greeting function call output. I'm going to concatenate the string before colon with the string MSG in line number 16. Similarly, I'm going to concatenate the string after colon with MSG in line number 18. Observe that we are now seeing a differentiated output between the print function call's output and the greeting function call output. Let's step through this program from the beginning. In line number 11, I'm defining a variable called MSG which is outside any of the function definitions. So I'm creating a global variable. Recall that global variables are part of global frame. When I click on next, you'll notice an entry for global variable MSG with a value of hello within the global frame. When I click on next now, program execution will go from line 13 to line 16. That's because we are defining a function. In line 16, I'm printing MSG variable value. So it's going to display before colon hello. That's because the value is hello inside the global variable MSG. In line 17, I'm calling the greeting function. The program execution will now go to line 13. In line 14, I'm calling the print function to display MSG variable within the greeting function. Python will look for the definition for variable MSG within the local function call frame, which is the greeting frame. Since there isn't a definition for MSG within the greeting frame, Python will look for MSG definition in the global frame. So line 14 is going to display hello. Once the greeting function call is done, we are going to implicitly return none and the function call frame will get deleted. In line 18, we are going to get display as after colon hello. That's because the variable MSG contains the value as hello. Let's write down rule number 5. Rule number 5 states that you can generally just use global variables inside a function. There is an exception to rule number 5, usage of the term use. I'm going to give you details of that shortly. What is the exception for the term use? That's going to be assignment operation. Let's change this program slightly. Instead of just calling the print function call inside the greeting function call, I'm going to include an assignment statement saying MSG equal to string welcome exclamation point. Let's step through the program from the beginning. You're creating a global variable MSG in line 11. After that, you're defining the greeting function. Line 17 will display before colon hello. That's because MSG variable contains the value as hello within the global frame. When you call the greeting function in line 18, you're going to create a local variable called MSG within the greeting function. That's going to come from execution of line 14. In line 15, when you call the print function call to display MSG, Python is going to look for the definition for MSG variable name within the local function call frame, which is the greeting function call frame. Since there is a definition there, it's going to display the string welcome. Once you're done with the greeting function call execution, your entire frame along with the local variable MSG will get deleted. Observe that assigning a value of welcome into the variable MSG within the greeting function had no effect on the global variable, and the global variable MSG still has a value of hello. Now when line 19 is executed, the print function call is going to display after colon hello. That's because the global variable name MSG contains a value of hello. So rule number 6 states that if you do an assignment to a variable inside a function, then Python assumes that you want that variable to be local. So I'm going to say Python assumes you want it to be local. Rule number 7 is a very strange rule in Python. Let's change this example slightly. I'm going to take line number 14 and move it after the print function call. Observe that you're getting an error here. Let's step through the program from the beginning. You're creating a global variable MSG, and then you're initializing the MSG variable to a value of hello. Then we are defining the greeting function. Then line number 17 will display the output as before colon hello, which is the value inside MSG global variable. When you call the greeting function, Python looks ahead that you have an assignment operation within the function definition, and it will complain that you're trying to access a local variable before you assign a value to it. This is the only case where I've encountered Python is looking ahead without even executing the current line of code. So let's type in rule number 7. Rule number 7 states that assignment to a variable should be before its use in a function, even if you have a global variable. Even if you have a global variable with the same name. This kind of a strange rule. You need to keep in mind that Python is looking ahead here, and it is assuming that you want this particular variable to have a local scope as opposed to the global scope. Let's go through rule number 8. Rule number 8 will enable us to understand how we can let Python know that we want a global scope for a particular variable. I'm going to go back to the previous version of the program. The global declaration enables you to let Python know that you want to use a specific variable within a function in the global scope. The way that you'll be declaring a variable to be global is by using the global keyword and then the variable name after that. If you have multiple variables which you want to use as global variables, you'll have to say global variable 1, comma variable 2, comma variable 3, and so on. For now, I'm only going to declare MSG variable as the global variable. Let's go through this particular program execution from the beginning. The global declaration is just an informational statement for Python. We'll understand what that means shortly. Line 12 creates a MSG variable, which is the global variable inside the global frame. Then we are defining the greeting function. In line 19, we are calling the print function to display MSG. MSG global variable has the value hello. Once you call the greeting function, you'll observe that Python will directly skip over line 15's execution. That's because line 15 is just informational for Python. It's just informing Python that you want the scope of the variable MSG to be global instead of local. That enables you to use the assignment operation within your function without creating a local variable with that particular operation. For a given variable, you can either have a global scope or a local scope. You cannot partially have local scope within some parts of your function and then have global scope within other parts of your function. So now when I click on next, your assignment operation here of MSG equal to welcome exclamation point will update the value of the global variable MSG, switching between the previous statement and the current. You're going to see hello versus welcome in the MSG variable within the global frame. So this particular function has a side effect with respect to the global variables value update. Now line 17 is going to display welcome exclamation point. If I click on line 21 now, that's going to display after colon welcome exclamation point. That's because we changed the value of the global variable. So let me type out rule number 8. Rule number 8 here says that you can use a global declaration to prevent Python from creating a local variable. That's going to be the last rule for global variables. Doing a quick recap about the variable rules for global variables. Recall that when you have a global variable, you can just use the value as such within your function. The only exception to that would be the assignment operation. When you have an assignment operation, no matter where your assignment line is within your function, you cannot use the global variable name and you'll be using the local scope for the variable. How can you override the local scope while using the assignment operator? That would be by using the global keyword. I'll wrap up this video here. In the next video, we'll learn the rules for argument passing.